The CMPD will seek justice for our victims no matter how old the case is, and we want to seek justice for all of our victims. This case has been assigned to the Crimes Against Children unit. All of our victims are adults now, but at the time of these offenses, they were young teenagers and sometimes younger. Our team has put in countless hours, a lot of really hard work to build a case of incidents that happened 20 and 30 years ago. They've already compiled a significant amount of charges against Mr. Goff, who is in custody this morning on those charges, and there's a lot more work to be done. But I'm here this morning with Detective Misty James, who's the lead detective on the case, and I'm going to let her go into a little bit more of all the work she's done and where the case stands today.
Thank you, sir. A little update on the case. On Monday morning, our team obtained 10 additional warrants against Ray Goff for indecent liberties with a minor. Monday evening, with the assistance of Mount Holly Police Department, we arrested Mr. Goff at his home. He's now been transferred to Mecklenburg County Jail, where he's awaiting. This investigation started back in February of this year. It all started with an email that came to the Special Victims Unit, just asking, just a general question, just asking, what can I do if I was sexually assaulted back in the 90s by Ray Goff, and I was around 13 years old. This man had no idea if anything could even be done. So when he stresses that we take every tip serious, we do. We take it, we go with it, phone call, email, whatever. The investigation then began. We started with that. We found out that the reason he came forward was because his son wanted to learn to skate. And as soon as his son said that, he did not want to not teach his son to skate. And the emotions started coming up. He wanted to see if anything could be done. He didn't want his son to be also a victim of a man such as Ray Goff. We began the investigation, and during the investigation, more victims continued to come forward. Their stories were very similar and consistent with the way the assaults would occur. Warrants were issued, and Ray Goff was arrested of March 21st of this year. Okay, additional victims came forward, and then again on Monday he was arrested for those additional charges. We believe that there are truly more victims out there, victims of Ray Goff. There's no case too old to investigate with a juvenile victim. Juvenile sexual assault victims often don't come forward. They're embarrassed. In the 90s, it wasn't like the day we're living in today. People don't want to talk about it. We will continue to seek justice for all these children. Even if you don't want to prosecute your case, we're encouraging you to come forward, and that your case will help the others. Our team can be reached at 704-432-3905. Also joining us today is a victim advocate from Pat's Place Child Advocacy Center. Here to speak more on that is Shauna.
Thank you, Detective. My name is Shauna Pagano. I work with Pat's Place Child Advocacy Center. And child sexual abuse is far more common than people realize. Conservative numbers estimate that 1 in 10 children will be sexually abused by the time they reach 18. And generally, victims of child sexual abuse don't tell anyone immediately about the abuse. We know that as many as 75% of kids and teens wait days, weeks, months, years to tell anyone, if they ever tell at all. This is known as delayed disclosure, and it is even more prevalent with male victims. Victims may feel embarrassed or shame about the abuse. Oftentimes there's a belief that somehow the abuse was the fault of the child. And in male victims, sometimes they think that the abuse is somehow tied to their masculinity or sexuality. It is very common to fear not being believed, and this is even amplified when the abuser is someone like the Ray Goff, who is well known and well liked in the community. So if you are a survivor of sexual abuse, please know that you are not alone, and there are resources out there to help support you. The website 1 in 6 is a great website that has a lot of information about male victimization, and they have a chat line. You can also reach out to the Charlotte Greater Hope line, and please contact the National Suicide Hotline if needed. I'm going to turn it back over to Detective James.
At the end of the day, we want justice for all the victims of Ray Goff. And we want to make sure that he's held accountable for these heinous crimes that he's done on these juveniles. Again, we believe there are more victims out there, and coming forward could make a difference in this case and for the victims who are struggling. Again, we'll open it up for questions now.
So how many victims do you believe there are right now?
I currently have 8 victims.
8.
8.
And tell us in what capacity do they all know them in the same relationship sort of way?
So none of the victims know each other, but they are all skater of the skateboard community here in Charlotte.
Was he currently coaching or very recently coaching?
He will say he was not coaching. He was mentoring kids, not getting paid for it. But when you're that good of a skater and a skateboarding community, they look up to you. And so he took that opportunity to use.
So he was arrested back in March. Did he bail out, or what, how was he out of jail?
Yes, he bailed out. He got a $60,000 bond.
And does he have a bond right now?
He is currently in booking. He was held in Gaston County with no bond, and he was transported back to Mecklenburg County this morning.
Was he arrested in Gaston, under Gaston charges initially, or was it Mecklenburg?
No, it's all Mecklenburg County, but he lives in Mount Holly, so we arrested him at his home Monday evening.
And when you said mentoring, was he recently, like in recent months, mentoring?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
At least not to my knowledge, because the latest victim I have was 2010.
You mentioned that it's never too late to come forward. What kind of evidence is helpful now that can help you tie the case back as far as the
So
90s?
on cases such as this, they're hard. I'm going to be honest, they're hard. You have to have corroborating evidence. So there's no physical evidence, like you get a sexual assault and you can go to the hospital and have a SANE kit performed. We don't have that, benefit for this case. So it is building the case, working with evidence, listening to other victims' stories and what's happened to them to corroborate evidence.
This is obviously a hard topic for parents to hear. So what is your message just in general to parents out there, when they're leaving their child with a trusted adult, a coach, a mentor?
I would suggest teach body safety and to teach to always tell. You're not going to be mad at them. You're not going to judge them. I know a lot of these male victims felt like they were going to be judged, being touched by a male in the 90s. They didn't want to say. I mean, I've talked to many males I've interviewed, have sat across from the table and cried of how embarrassed they were to talk about this. So as far as a parent, support your child, teach body safety, teach proper words. Body parts are your proper words. That would be my suggestion.
Were there female victims as well?
There was one female victim that came forward, yes, ma'am.
And Shauna, I know Pat's Place, you work a lot with the survivors. Do you have any, words that you could say about what you do to work with the victims after they've gone through something like this?
So at Pat's Place, we help coordinate the investigation and treatment of the most serious cases of child abuse in Mecklenburg County. And we currently work with ages 3 to 15 and then older as appropriate. And so part of that is really listening to kids tell their story in their own words. What we don't want people doing is asking kids details of their abuse. Please leave that to the professionals who know how to ask those questions. So it really it keeps up the quality of the investigation. We do provide mental health services, family advocacy, and a full medical evaluation. And I have to reiterate what Misty said in that teaching body safety is a really important way to mitigate risk. And so that these should be ongoing conversations that parents are having with kids.
And what are some signs maybe that parents should look out for if they believe there may be an inappropriate relationship taking place between an adult and a child?
So a lot of times what we see is grooming behavior, where a person who has the intent to be sexually abusive towards a child will start to isolate that child from others, spend more time with that child, maybe take them on outings, buy them gifts, really kind of create a bond with that child and then use that relationship to further exploit them and abuse them. So one of the things we do recommend is look out for those grooming behaviors. Someone that's paying especially a lot of attention to one particular child, and then they slowly start to cross physical boundaries and become more and more sexual and intimate as they go until they eventually abuse the child. We do provide trainings free of charge on how to mitigate those risks and talk to your children.
Could you put in layman's terms just a little bit what body safety is?
So body safety is talking to kids about what the parts of their bodies are, how, we don't want kids to feel like they are responsible for their own safety, right? Adults are responsible for keeping kids safe, but we do want to arm kids with information to help protect themselves and to have the words to say if something's happening that shouldn't be happening. Arming kids with information is essentially what we're doing about what the body, what people should and should not be doing with their body and their private parts. So it's just, it's a way of really kind of it's not talking about sex, right? We're not teaching sex education. We're teaching kids vital information to help protect themselves.
Talk about the long-term effects of if this goes on for a long period of time for these victims.
So, it ranges, right? We have some victims that show depression, anxiety, some have PTSD, some feel, they have suicidal ideations. There's a variety of mental health concerns that can come along with this kind of abuse. And a lot of times it's a lot of shame. And so because of that shame, they don't come forward and seek treatment and get the help that, they really need and deserve, because what we want, kids and teens to know is it's never your fault, absolutely never your fault, but many of our victims feel like it is. And so that's why it's really important to seek help at whatever age you are now or when you were abused. We definitely encourage you to get some resources.
He got out on a $60,000 bond initially. He's back in jail. Do you all think he should get back out on the streets?
Like I said, he did get out on a $60,000 bond, was what he got. I don't think he should be allowed back on the streets.
Why is that?
He's been molesting children.
All right, that's going to wrap it up. We'll send out a press release following this. Look in your inboxes in the next few hours. Thank you for coming.
Shauna, can you just spell your last name?
I sure can.
And first name, please.
It's SHAWNA. Last name is PAGANO. And that's Pat's Place Child Advocacy Center.
And just real quick, was there any red flags before his arrest in March, or any past criminal things that would have come up in a background check?
You can put that request later, but we're not going to speak on that this time.